Welcome back to the Love Lizzie podcast. Before we dive in, I want to share the most exciting news. Our Love Lizzie merch shop is now open. You can pre-order your Love Lizzie merch now through April 24th. The idea for Love Lizzie merch is actually a very old idea. When I was 19, I went through something very personal and very hard. And I had to be in a hospital by myself in a city that I had never been in a pretty difficult situation. I had a couple of friends with me, but I felt very alone and very scared. I remember being really cold. I had a t-shirt on and the hospital was so cold and the situation was just so overwhelming. My mom was helping me, the original Lizzie. She was helping me from afar, but she wasn't in the room and I really, really needed her. And I remember wishing that there was just a replica of my mother, like another older or wiser woman that was sitting with me in this waiting room and in this doctor's office, just like being with me. I remember thinking like, I wish I could build a world where there were a bunch of women that volunteered their time and they would wear these really cute, cozy, welcoming outfits, and they would just go sit with young women at the hospital when they needed them. There would be this number I could call. And if I called the number and I said, hey, I'm alone, I'm scared, and I need help, that one of these women would come and they would be dressed in a way that I would know they were there for me. And we would spend the day together and I would feel like I had someone on my team. And so I imagined these kind of like sweatsuits. I imagined a sweatshirt and a hat and maybe even some sweatpants. And so ever since that day, which was a long time ago, I have been dreaming of deploying these pieces of merchandise that would tell the world that I'm wearing this because I'm a loving, kind human. And if you are a stranger or someone who needs help, the outfit that I'm wearing sends the signal that I am a loving, kind person and I will help you. This first edition Love Lizzie merch is very much that dream manifested. We've created these beautiful, soft, cozy sweatshirts. We have the Love Lizzie logo right here on the chest, and it's in this really soft, welcoming pink. And then on the back is like the favorite thing that I have. This has the Love Lizzie font on the back. We also have the Love Lizzie hydrangea hat, which is so cute. It's the softest hat I've ever worn. And on the front right is a hydrangea, and on the back it says Love Lizzie. I've had people call me that we've gifted some of this merch to already and tell me that they've been stopped and people have been like, what is Lizzie and what does that mean? When you purchase a Love Lizzie merchandise item, you're saying to the world that I'm a loving and kind human and you can count on me. You also are helping us continue to do what we're doing here. So if you've loved these interviews or the solo casts have helped you in any way or lightened your day, and you want to see a world where women and girls are supported and loved and cared for, we really appreciate your support and help. We are basically trying to give you the longest hug you've ever felt when you're wearing the sweatshirt and making you feel so seen and loved by wearing the hat. The shop is live. I cannot believe it. I feel like I'm a totally different person than I was the young girl standing in that hospital at 19. This is the beginning of the greatest dream I've ever had, which is to deploy a community of women that are loving and kind and supportive and to change the world together. Hopefully you love the sweatshirt as much as I do. And this is just the first of many ideas that we're going to bring you through the shop. And I can't wait to share more. Thanks for being here. And I hope you love this episode. Danielle, welcome to the Love Lizzie podcast. So happy you are here and such a fan of your work and so excited to introduce you to this community who are big feelers. This is for the sensitive human who's moving through the world, feeling all the things and attuned with what's going on around them and also trying to like cope with that gift in a way that they can keep going when things are harder, when they're distracted by their emotions or hurt by their emotions. And so today, Danielle is going to share with us kind of the mission of her podcast, Don't Cut Your Own Bangs. If you were ever a teenage girl and you didn't cut your bangs, like I want to know you. I want to know how you didn't ever do that because I think I did it like 3 times from emotions, like feeling emotional and cutting my bangs. So glad to be here with you. Tell me a little bit, Danielle, about like where you are in the world and what you're up to.
Don't Cut Your Own Bangs is, I'll call it therapy light. So I work as a therapist by day, and then I'm a podcaster by the rest of the day. But I would say that the heart of Don't Cut Your Own Bangs is very much like you mentioned, like you grab a chunk of hair and you grab your scissors and you have a lot of confidence that this is going to be the thing that's going to, give me that confidence. It's going to change it all. It's that Devil Wears Prada makeover when, she gets the Chanel boots and the bangs and she's feeling amazing. But the reality is that I think a lot of us have experienced is it seems like a great idea and we snip and we're like, oh, what did I just do? There's also that knowing laughter that comes from sharing those tender, vulnerable, silly, bumpy, lumpy, less than perfect moments. And so the podcast is, yes, about emotions, but it's about how we can use emotions to interpret them like information. A big part of my journey has been about overcoming self-doubt and confusion or overwhelm. And the more I look at my emotions like allies and not obstacles, the more empowered I feel to make the next right step, which ultimately leads me closer into the direction that I want to be. And so that is the heart of the podcast. It's how do you turn emotions into allies, not obstacles? How do you interpret that information? And then, like the best things in life, when you realize you're not the only one who's experienced it, you can chuckle together. There's some levity, there's some lightness. It's more like the way you want to feel when you pile up on a couch with your girlfriend and catch up and just laugh. That's the tone.
I love that. And I think has mostly been in the depths of emotion and almost afraid of levity. Like, I don't know, especially after my mom died, it was like betrayal to feel joy with her not here. I think we have so much going on in the world right now that we feel guilty if we're joyful.
I had three specific moments where levity or lightness broke through a really challenging time. The first example, when I was a theater student and a theater kid, there was this feeling of being a budding adult. You are 19, you have like the world ahead of you, but all of life's responsibilities aren't weighing on your shoulders. I was a kid who really wanted to be taken seriously. Like the things I was thinking about mattered. Take me seriously. And there's so much of that is still like, I find that serious self will come in social situations. If I don't feel like I belong, I'll try to put on the therapy blazer, whether literally or metaphorically, to try to boost my ego up, which, by the way, it's all ego. So that desire to be taken seriously. And then through hundreds of times of flubbing lines or tripping on stage or messing up, you just make an ass of yourself so many times trying to learn to be an actor that I think that each time I would hold myself or my perception so preciously and then experience a pratfall, those moments I would be holding so much tension, many times unbeknownst to me, so much tension because I wanted to control how I was perceived, which made my internal environment feel safe. And I didn't realize it was all about regulating my emotions. There was something about the freedom I felt when I could also laugh at myself. There were these moments where the bubble would burst and I could laugh and then other people could laugh too. And then flash forward, I remember when I was asked in my second year working in private practice as a therapist, I was asked to lead a support group and I had never done that before. And what I found once I got over worrying about whether or not I was doing a good job and just held space for this circle, people were revealing some of the most tender, shame-fueled, like they were admitting addictions, secret affairs, absolute terrible fights they had with their spouses. Every single group, there were moments of laughter, often more than one, where someone would see themselves in someone else's story. And I think so much of that was the freedom that they felt to be their full, messy, imperfect selves. They weren't performing in that room. And actually, I'm kind of having an epiphany as I'm saying this, that I was trying so hard to perform being an important person that when that bubble would break and I was my human self, then the laughter would come. And I think in that room, they weren't performing being good at business or being a good parent or, a good, like they weren't performing in their roles in life. They just were able to sort of like let their belly hang and not suck it in and acknowledge the mistakes they made in a room without judgment, and laughter always followed.
That's something I feel that I have exhausted myself doing. And I think even now that I'm more embodied, which is a practice, I can feel the tension instead of just be holding the tension and not know it's there. What did realizing that do for you? And then how did you apply a process to relieve that tension?
I think that there were levels of awareness or kind of moments of peekaboo where maybe I would remember and forget. And it wasn't until I had a miscarriage when I was 36, I think. And my husband and I, we were just starting to try to have kids. And I was 12 weeks pregnant, and I had never experienced grief like that. What I remember so clearly, it was like all of the stories that were very active in me in the pregnancy, running constantly. There was always like one of these tracks playing in my mind. It was either about my body changing and how I was feeling about the changes in my body and how I was feeling about the weight, but also how I shouldn't worry about the weight because that shouldn't matter. And because the patriarchy and snapback culture. And then also, oh, don't forget to love yourself because that's how you teach your kids to love themselves. I remember losing sleep like 10 weeks pregnant because I couldn't wrap my mind around how potty training worked. It was 3 a.m. and I was awake and I just couldn't wrap my head around how do you know when the kid is ready? How do you go from a diaper to the toilet? Like there was something I was always worried about, but also what I was presenting to the world was the calm, put together therapist. And so there was such a chasm between what I was experiencing internally and what I was really thinking and believing about everything. And then what I was showing to the world. And I know now that I was not as aware as I am in this moment that was happening or that I was doing that. It was like I was almost more in tug of war with myself about what I thought I should be thinking, saying, and doing. And then what was coming up that I was ignoring or trying to pretend I wasn't. And when the loss came, when I lost the baby, there was so much about it. It completely took me by surprise. It was excruciatingly painful. And I had never had an experience like that before. And what I realized, we were in the emergency room and my husband and I, he eventually crawled into the bed with me. This was like the tests were done. All of the medical work that was being done was essentially wrapped. But anybody who's ever experienced being in the ER, like you're there for a bit. We were laying in bed together and he was just holding me. And I was so, I think, in shock that I wasn't even crying. This custodial worker comes in the room and we had been there maybe 8 hours. We are wrung out, strung out, utterly exhausted. And this man walks in. He's wearing like a Purdue polo shirt. He wasn't a medical worker, but it was like an outside company specifically, I think, to handle and dispose of medical waste. So he's coming in the room. We are having one of the most tender, intimate moments of our entire lives. Like we've never, like the loss, the grief, the future, all of these very real things. He walks in and he notices, apparently David was wearing like something else with Purdue. My husband was wearing like, I don't know if it was a Purdue hat or shirt. And he just starts talking to David about Purdue, like no reading the room. He wasn't being rude either. He wasn't being unkind. He was just oblivious in the best way. It was like an angel sent him to us because he's talking to David about Purdue football and Purdue this and when did you go? And meanwhile, he's just handling trash and handling soiled sheets. And like, I'm just laying there curled up in the fetal position, tucked in his arm. And the way he was making small talk, the way he was so oblivious. And my husband is a people pleaser first and a protector second. He didn't know what to do. So he's just engaging in small talk. And I'm just laying there with like one of the most traumatic things that's ever happened to me. And it wasn't in the moment, but when the man left, we just start dying laughing. We couldn't believe the ridiculousness. It brings tears to my eyes of like relief. It burst a bubble of tension that was in the room. And I think it only worked that way because he had such a pure heart, whoever he was. And sometimes we will still think about that and we'll say, like, do you remember that guy, the Purdue guy? And it makes us laugh again. And it didn't change the grief. It didn't make the road ahead necessarily any different, but what it gave us permission to do was access that emotion in the midst of everything else. That helped me really recognize what I see now. It was twofold. The grief was the first time from that moment until about 4 days after, all of the voices in my head, the chatter was gone. I had a break for 4 days and I experienced a completely quiet mind. We went to dinner 3 or 4 days in, and it was with people that I only went to get out of the house. I didn't go for any other reason. I told David, again, people pleaser first. I said, I'm going to Uber the second I'm ready to leave. You don't have to leave, but like I'll bounce whenever I need to. And I remember walking in that room. I walked in. I had nothing I was wanting to gain from anybody. I wasn't looking for any subconscious bid for approval. There were no strings attached. I walked in wholly in my body, fully in my body. And so when somebody asked, "How are you?" I remember thinking, "Yeah, I'm glad I'm here, but I'm not good." And I just remember like talking to people like that. And if they asked me a follow-up question, I really told them. I had so many stories about the people in that room that ultimately proved to not be true, because when I showed up differently in the room, they were different in the room. It fundamentally shifted me. Of course, I slip back into old habits sometimes, but I see where the joy in the hospital bed, it helped me remember that eventually you will laugh. You're going to have a lot of down moments, but you will also feel other things too. And then what that brought, that moment of sort of being in the cusp of that grief and it being so fresh, but also interacting with other people, I realized walking in a social environment without my stories about myself or other people, that sort of neutral state, it was so freeing. It was confidence in a way that I didn't know before.
It's only because you could actually feel the difference. I work a lot with women as well in this space of like anxiety and thoughts. And a lot of times I'm dealing with women who have overcome a lot of obstacles, emotional obstacles, trauma obstacles, people that have not been a space where they could show up without the stories and the vigilance and the controlling themselves to try to stay safe, right? And so that's like an instinctual thing. I think many of us learn for many different reasons. The things that I love the most about the journey of the process you're talking about is the moment where someone who has never been able to trust someone, who has never been able to feel safe walking into a room, meets the people that are going to teach her that she can just be herself. I feel like that gentleman in the hospital that evening gave you permission to be a certain way without having to be a certain way. It's almost like the way he achieved the levity in himself about this. He just came in with levity.
He didn't treat us preciously, but he was, by all accounts, kind. And I will say, conversely, on almost the opposite end of that story, the other thing that happened after he left, before we left, other nurses in the ER must have either heard or been told what happened. And 5 of them, one at a time, almost like single file, came in and held my hand and said, "You're not alone. I have 4. I've lost 2, or I lost 2, and then I had 2 more and lost 1 more." Like, held my hand and shared in their own way their experience with loss like I had. I think because of what they see every day, they didn't come in too, soft and tender either, but their hearts were wide open. And it made me a better therapist too, because I think I can hold space for somebody's humanity and not put my projection of what I think they're probably experiencing onto it. And I think the gift that they gave me from sharing that story is a big part, I think, of what fueled the podcast too. And you know this as an artist and a storyteller like you are. There's moments in life where maybe we want, just tell me the things to do, give me the steps, give me the tools. And then there are other times where I don't want to be told or coached. I learn more through other people revealing their own humanity to me. there are many times, I'd say more often now than ever, I'm more attracted to that. Like, reveal something and let me draw my own conclusions and weave it into my life my way, than I am the prescriptive, like, take these 4 simple steps to never feeling uncomfortable again, or,
And then it's like, okay, I did the 4 steps, but I'm still uncomfortable now. What do I do? And the 4 steps can be helpful in the beginning of a journey for someone to like pinpoint themselves. But I also believe that the nuance that kind of got lost in a certain age of marketing that I was a consumer of the last 12 years of doing this, I'm pretty sure that I've done a lot of different things to try to understand how to be myself in the world, both online and in real life. But I do think one of the reasons that I feel people are in the position they're in right now emotionally is because we kind of like cut out nuance. You can literally fix this about yourself. And it's like, first of all, you're presenting the perspective that I need to be fixed. Like, I got to solve this. There's a problem to solve. And as a practitioner, too, I'm always wondering how to stay in my own energy and hold the space versus letting myself take on something that no one's asking me to take on, especially in like a caretaker role in whatever capacity. And I hear from you this difference between niceness and kindness. I'm wondering both on your own self and on others, because one of the things I also know that you work a lot with, Danielle, is helping people figure out their boundaries. But there's a lot of nuance to boundaries, especially as women are waking up in this moment in society and feeling like, okay, I've been respectfully setting boundaries and the world is still behaving this way. I think there's this pivot that we're doing inside ourselves is like, what is the difference between being the nice girl? I'm a nice girl. I am helpful. I show up. I am pleasant. I'm always thoughtful. I'm always considerate. And I'm a human, and that doesn't work for me.
I love this topic. This is like one of my favorites. So nice, first and foremost, is performative. There's an exchange happening. I am being nice to you because I want you to think I'm nice. If I'm kind, kindness is clarity. Kindness is truth. I can be very kind, but you may not think I'm being nice. One of the easiest ways for me to think about that, and what's really shifted my relationship with this dual kind of understanding of how similar they are, but how very different they are, is with my kids. I want them to be kind. And sometimes like learning pleases and thank yous, like you talk about the beginning of the journey, there's like foundational things you have to learn, but nice is laughing along at the misogynistic joke. Nice is saying sorry when someone bumps into you. Nice is performative. And I think in so many ways for women, it's a shrinking or a hollow exchange. And I think nice is also connected to, if we think about the trauma responses or the fear responses of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I've also heard somebody recently say fight, flight, freeze, and appease. I actually like appease better. Because fawn, feel like I'm fawning all over you. Like appease, it's like I'm going to acquiesce to you to safely manage this moment. I think nice falls into that camp. I'm going to be nice so that I don't have to feel maybe the very real threat of your reaction, depending on the circumstance we're talking about, or I don't have to feel the weight of your discomfort. I learned when I was really little that my big emotions made people uncomfortable. My niceness also was rooted in not inconveniencing somebody with an inconvenient feeling. Also, I think nice is boring, just like pretty is boring. Kind is clear. So with my daughter, I can absolutely be firm. I will not let you throw this toy at me. I love you. I will not let you do that. I think that nice gets conflated. Your reaction to me does not determine whether or not I was kind, particularly if I'm putting a boundary. And I'm saying all of this, giving everyone listening the most respect and believing first that we know the difference between being unkind and using telling the truth as a way to be critical, judgmental, or cruel. I'm just giving everyone the benefit of the doubt that like we know what we're saying, because obviously people can use the truth, their version of the truth, to sort of take like a machete at somebody else's emotional self. And that's not what I'm talking about. Kindness is clarity. And I think the highest expression of truth, like the most evolved, elevated, light-filled, heart-filled expression of the truth is kind. I'm talking about the type of truths of like, I can't do this anymore, or I don't want to be married anymore. Those are hard truths that maybe don't feel nice, but they are kind. If it's honoring my humanity and it's honoring your humanity, it's kind.
I also think where you went with that, where kind not being the truth to slay someone else and make them feel small, but kind because it's so true for me and I'm saying it in a kind way because it's required in order for me to be like in the world as an honest person. I also think that kindness, even when it's hard and scary and it feels like it still might hurt someone's feelings, can actually be the difference between a marriage ending or not. It can be the difference because a lot of us walk around and I don't want to hurt her feelings, so I'm not going to say that. But then after a while, you keep not saying it and you keep being in an environment that doesn't work for you. And then have you actually given the other person the information they need to make the environment work for you?
A great example that just came to me, I'm pretty sure I heard Trevor Noah use this example. If you had food in your teeth, the nice thing to do would be to smile and pretend like I don't see it. The kind thing would be, hey, Teresa, you've got just a little. That way you don't have to walk around the rest of your day. Now, you might feel embarrassed for a blip, but that is kind. That is kind. And I know that's like a small example, but also sometimes I think it's particularly with big emotional concepts, when we can bring them down to like a bite-sized chunk, it can be helpful too to remember it.
Yeah. And I think the difference between nice and kind with the example with your daughter is that nice would have been, oh, please don't do that. Well, you just basically taught her nothing because she's like, oh, I have the power. Mommy doesn't want me to do that, but she's not telling me not to do that. My sister's very good at this with her kids too. I'm hearing the same kind of voice that I always admire in her. She has boundaries with her children and they're really effective. Like the way she speaks with them is so effective. And I'm just always like, wow. And it's very much like the example you gave. I'm not going to accept you doing that.
That is what boundaries are. I think that wanting to let somebody know how you feel, being vulnerable, providing context, that is all great and beautiful. There is a place for that. But a boundary is about communicating what you will do, what I will do. So with my daughter, I will not let you hit me. I will not let you throw that toy. And if you do it again, I'm going to intervene and I'm going to take that toy away, or I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to move you. But boundaries are communicating what I will hold myself accountable to. In relationships, it's very similar. Most of the sessions I have, and I'll say this is pretty much true for just about anybody who's come into therapy, the most common thing, people come into therapy wanting to talk about other people. And I think on some level, wanting the other person to change. Ultimately, what the work comes back around to, and it's one of my favorite moments in the process, is when we've sort of exhausted the conversation about the other until it comes back to the person who's actually sitting there. This is actually so prevalent, particularly in like narcissistic recovery work, because the narcissist is never going to seek help. They don't see themselves in the need to do the work. I'm skewed in so many ways from training and my focus to think this way. It can be so helpful too to also have like a systematic perspective to see that you're not alone in it, because I don't want to pathologize every emotion as something that's isolated to an individual. It's not, which is why podcasts and conversations like this are so great. And when somebody is sitting in a therapy session with me, ultimately one is left with the question, and what are you going to do with that? You've just recognized this. You've just made this connection. What will you do? And that is what boundaries really are. It's what you're holding yourself accountable to. I won't let myself be treated this way. I won't let you talk to me this way. And if and when it happens again, this is what I will do in response to that. They don't always have to be like giant like lines in the sand, by the way. There can be nuance there too.
They become big when we don't boundary them. That's my experience. It's like I wait too long to set the boundary, and then it is really big to me. Been like trying to control something I can't control for so long, which is the other person or the way they're showing up. And then that's what I ruminate on. And then I don't set the boundary along the way. And then the boundary feels like it has to be really big.
A 1 out of 10 might sound, or maybe a 2 out of 10 might sound something like this. Hey, I know you think you're joking when you say this. It lands on me as a criticism. It hurts and I don't like it. And I want you to know that. That can be the beginning of a boundary, because what you're eroding is the confusion. Because I think a lot of times in disagreements, people want to defend intention and they never want to look at impact. And so I'm letting you know how this behavior impacts me. And let's say a little time goes by and it happens again. Well, now there's a little less room. Do you remember that conversation we had where I let you know, when you say and do things like this, it makes me feel this way? Well, I know I talked to you about it once before, and I just want to iterate it again, that you may think it's this, your intentions may be this, but it is hurting me. And if you continue to do it, knowing how it affects me, I'm going to have to really think about that. That's information for me. That's introducing it in layers and stages, because sometimes, gosh, we're all fallible. We're all flawed. We make mistakes. And I'm sure that I have been the person who's needed to receive the truth as often as I give it. But the hope is that you're in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or even a business partnership or a romantic relationship, where you hope that the other person is invested in your well-being. And that's sort of the assumption going into a conversation like this. Like, I'm going to assume positive intent, that you don't want to hurt me intentionally. And so I'm letting you know how this behavior affects me. And then from there, like, listen, you're either showing me that you're incapable or you don't want to adjust this, because I've let you know how it impacts me and you're not doing anything about it. So if it happens again, or at this point, like, I'm going to remove myself when you talk to me this way. I'm going to leave when you talk to me this way, or I'm going to end the phone call when you talk to me this way, or I'm going to take some space when you talk to me this way. But it's whatever you're going to hold yourself accountable to. You're not telling them what they can and cannot do, because that will bring out such childlike behavior. Like, you can't talk to me that way.
If they do talk to you that way, they're still doing the thing. And what you saying something didn't make any difference for you. But what I'm also curious about as you're speaking is the boundaries within ourselves with ourselves. Because what I am experiencing, Danielle, is that I have this little Teresa, and she only learned to get what she needed by hysterically crying. I mean, like, she was the youngest in the house. It was loud and Italian. If you wanted to be heard, like, you had to be loud. I'm this like ragey 4-year-old that is like, wait a minute, you left me here. What happened? You will notice me. And I have been finding that for a long time. I thought that I had to like externally teach people how to love me well, so that little Teresa never felt that way. And now I'm learning that I have to almost create boundaries within my own relationship with little Teresa. And that doesn't mean that people can go treat us bad. That's not what I'm saying. But if I don't have boundaries within myself, I will not show up here anymore if you do that. Well, that's a really powerful thing to say. I feel like I trust my own self that I'll be okay if you don't do this thing, if you don't meet me here, right? There's a lot of secure attachment that's needed. And I hear secure attachment be talked about as like, I'm secure with you, Danielle, but actually there is a part of secure attachment that gets created within the self.
Sure. Well, I'll say that I love that you're bringing up attachment theory. I have learned through not listening to that voice 100 times, the consequence of not listening to that voice. I have a trustworthy barometer on how safe somebody is. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not saying that I can look in a crowd and automatically know danger, 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 safe, safe, safe. But in a social interaction, my nervous system, it could be through hardwiring, radioactive spider, trauma, sexual abuse, hypervigilance, like whatever we want to call it. But I have a physical sense when somebody doesn't feel safe. And I have betrayed that knowing many times in favor of niceness to my detriment in some way, big and small. And so when I honor that voice, and that doesn't always require like an Aaron Brockovich level monologue. Sometimes it's just quietly removing myself. Like a boundary with me, I always have permission to leave anytime I want. And so often giving myself the permission to leave anytime I want, I don't always need to do it. But it's like, I know, girl, we can get out of any situation we don't want to be in. You are not trapped. Like that is a great boundary for me. But in terms of like little Teresa, let me show you. So I'm holding up a picture of myself at four or five. And then I have a little picture of my son and a little picture of my daughter. And they're all in the same like little frame because the little inner child in me interacts with these other kids every day. And so I always like to remind myself who she is and how sweet and innocent and how lovely she is. When my daughter has big feelings, that's why I wrote a children's book, Wrestling a Walrus. When my daughter or my son have a tantrum or they're really scared or they have a big feeling, that I want to listen, I want to tend to it, I want to honor it, I want to hold space for it, all of that stuff. But if we were on a road trip, no matter how mad she is, I'm not going to let her drive. Like, no matter how scared, mad, no matter how bad the tantrum is, she's not getting out of her car seat. She's not going to get to pick the music in that moment. Loving her, being kind to her is not giving her power, but it's honoring her experience. I actually create that visual for myself when I'm in a really turbulent place and I can feel little Danielle. Little Danielle's story is often rooted in there's not space for me. So if I overgive and I oversay yes and I'm being too nice and doing all of those overfunctiony things, if I start to feel like there's not space for me in my life, that's when little Danielle will want to act out or act up. So a visual that I'll actually think of is I'm in a car and there's the highest, most, evolved expression of me, and I want her behind the wheel. And little Danielle's in the back seat. And I just continually visually remind myself, little Danielle's in the back seat. She's on the journey with us. She's on the ride. And I want her there, but she's not in control.
How do you recognize her before she gets the wheel?
It's kind of like two sides of the mountain. And you kind of have to work on these in tandem. And it's a constant refining process. I've become more clear of not so much what I'm experiencing internally, but what my behaviors are when little Danielle, because she feels like she's not seen and there's not room from her. What I want to do is withdraw and I want to retreat. I'll stonewall or silent treatment or ghost. It's like a petulant avoidance. I'm standing and I'm pouting in the room, but I want you to know that I'm upset, but don't talk to me. But I need you to know that I'm upset. I need you to see that I'm hurting because I don't know how to tend to my own need, which is what kids do. So I'm aware of those behaviors. And over time, I've just increasingly realized a therapist I used to see called it walking the cat back. So a lot of times that knowledge comes in hindsight. So this is where the moment ended. Let's walk back. Let's walk back. Let's walk back and just see if we can follow. Where did the water start to like leak out the top of the bucket? The other process that I do, and I try to do whenever I'm in those moments where I'm really caught in a loop of arguing with someone in my mind, the courtroom drama in the mind, it's a process that I got from a woman named Byron Katie. It's called The Work. You ask yourself 4 questions. The first 2 are yes or no, and the second 2 are open-ended. And she really encourages you to write them down, not just think about it. But sometimes I cheat, sometimes I do both. But the question is that true? The example that just came recently, I wanted to go for a walk 2 days ago. I was exhausted at the end of the day and I wanted to go for a walk. And my husband, I was calling him and like, hey, when I get home with the kids, assuming everyone's taken care of, are you okay if I go for a walk? And there was this really long pause. And I immediately reacted to that. I was like, what the hell is this pause? Like, do you know what I do in a day? Do you know? Like all of this defensiveness and all of this activation, little Danielle was off. She was like, we're driving. and so he paused and he was having his reaction. His little David was having a moment. My little Danielle was having a moment. And I just shut down and it turned into, fine, never mind. I won't go on the walk. And, and I'm not proud of this, by the way. I haven't had a moment like this in so long, but boy, it must have happened just so I could talk about it on this. It was all meant to be. The story that I was utterly convinced of, borderline could have chiseled it into a rock that I was convinced of, was that David has to have, everything has to be fair. Everything has to be fair. If he can't go on a walk, then I can't go. Like that was what I was convincing myself of, someone I love, by the way, who loves me, by the way. But in that moment, no. So I was withdrawing. I was avoiding eye contact. I, wouldn't even stand close enough to him for there to be room for affection. I was giving him like a wide berth in the kitchen. Just avoid, like, no, you can't touch me. No, we're not having physical contact. No. And like, what's wrong? Nothing. It was not my best look. And later that night with my journal, which, by the way, the process that I'm mentioning, when I'm most activated, I want to do it the least, which is how I know I need to do it. I just started with a little bit of inquiry. David, things have to be 50-50 with David, or he won't let me, whatever the specific thought was, but it had to do with fairness. David needs everything to be fair. Is that true? Well, I don't know. Okay, can you absolutely know that that's true? So the second question, yes or no, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? And sometimes I'll really push myself. Would you bet a puppy's life on the truth of that statement? Would you bet a puppy to the death on the truth of that statement? And I'm like, well, no, it's not so true that I would kill a puppy. Then okay, then maybe it's not wholly and totally true.
Let's tie that dot, because that's pretty brilliant. Like, you put a levity question into the anxious spiral process because you learned how effective it was. That is such an intentional use of levity.
If I need like something lighthearted, is there anything you could say that would be truer than what you just said? And I can almost always find something truer, and like the capital T sense of the truth. And so once I acknowledge it's not the whole story, then it becomes a story, not the truth that I want to live and die and fight by. The next question is, how do you show up when you believe that it's true? And so in as much detail as you can articulate, what happens to you when you believe this thought? And all of the things that I told you about my behavior, I have access to that so clearly because I just did this for myself. I withdraw affection. I avoid eye contact. I shrink. Also, my abdomen is one big knot, and not in the sexy six-pack abs knot, but like in the constipating kind of knot. It's just tight. Everything's tight. And then who would you be in that exact same moment without the thought? So you drop yourself in your imagination back into the same scenario. Everything about what you're experiencing is the same, except that thought is not in your head. Who would you be without the thought? And almost always my answer is, well, I would be present. I would be receptive. I would be grounded. All the things I wasn't in the moment. And then I just feel tension leaving my body. And usually there's a good opportunity for repair after something like that. What almost always comes after that too is I can open myself up enough to maybe put myself in his shoes for a second, where I had no access to that before. I was very rigid in my thinking. And so that process, in addition to the visual of putting my little girl in the back seat, it's just a constant refining.
You and I are pretty practiced, right? Like if we thought about advanced study of nervous system regulation, I would say that you and I probably have a lot of tools in our tool belt. And we're probably really used to giving ourselves permission to take the time to do the exercise that you just did. Let's frame this for the person who is not of the belief that they have a lot of time. And don't get me wrong, it's true in a lot of homes and situations and workplaces where like you are being asked a lot. And so we don't want to gaslight that what you feel isn't true, but just this idea that you want me to stop, journal. When am I going to do that? My kid's puking on the floor. The other one's got a diaper. Like, what do you mean? Right. But then also, talk to me about the story that I don't have time for this introspection or process, but within also the shame and guilt for those of us that are trying to be the nice girl and still haven't maybe laid her to rest.
So, what I would say to anybody who feels like, well, I don't have the time, maybe you don't. And maybe you won't until circumstances of your life present enough discomfort to where sitting with something has to change. Like nobody comes to the conclusion of something has to change because everything is comfortable. And so that is okay. There's getting ready to be ready to be ready. So you might be listening to this, and this might just be a good seed plant that you're just not ready to water. And that's okay. There are so many books on my shelf behind me that I have not read, but they're there. Like they're my good book buds. And one day I might read them. You know what I mean? I think we're always evolving and returning home to ourselves and wanting to continue to evolve and grow. The most beautiful expression of that is acknowledging that we are never done. We're never a completed project. And so if you are in a place in your life, like I devoted myself to becoming a therapist to try to heal myself. And I can say that now. At the time, I was almost so embarrassed to admit that. No one goes into a healing profession because life was cush. You know, it just, your healing becomes your medicine. And so if you are truly in a space and time, or if there's a thought in your mind of like, well, yeah, it must be nice, I would really invite you to examine that, because must be nice, the subtext is always that would be nice. And so if something is attractive to you, but the way that it's described isn't quite right, that's great information too. That's your refining process. There's something about that that speaks to me, but not all of that. And that's how I'm sure, Teresa, you've learned your process and are continuing to learn your process. And that's the same way I discover mine. I'll adopt something from somebody else and I'll try it on like an outfit. And then I'll realize, oh, I'm just not the pink blazer person, but I'm glad I tried it, you know? So I would say that. The other is momentum. I think so often people start this sort of self-development, self-exploration, self-healing process when, like somebody who's on an airplane, jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, and they're like, where's my parachute? It's, well, the best answer when there's that much momentum leading to an emotional outburst in the form of tears, anger, rage, sometimes the only way out is through. And so I would almost say you might just need to be an imperfect parent and let that messy moment happen and then repair afterwards. You're not going to be able to stop the momentum once you're out of the plane without a chute. It's more about recognizing, oh, okay, so in that moment, I felt like I was jumping out of a plane without a parachute. Let me walk the cat back and see, is there any skill set I could have had, a tool I could have used? Or should I have just prayed and put on noise canceling headphones until I got to a safe place? Anxiety will always convince you you're behind, or there's not enough time, or permanence. This is going to be like this forever. And what I absolutely know to be true, your emotions can't kill you. Your emotions can be hard, but emotions themselves are not life-threatening, and they're all temporary. They're all temporary. If you're in a really hard one, it's not my way of saying just hold your hand over the stove and let yourself burn and sizzle. But what you can know, the kindest, most truest thing that I can tell myself or anybody else when they're holding such a hard moment is, this is temporary. And the version that I tell my daughter when she's holding something really hard is, I know this is so hard for you, baby, and you will be okay. I'm not saying it is okay, but I know that there will be a version of you in the future that will be. A simple practice that does not involve a pen and paper. You don't have to stop. Any time you catch your reflection in a surface, in a mirror, in a compact, in a window, say something kind to yourself. We are so practiced. We all have the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours shitting on ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves. One of the truest ways I've found to access something other than that is to start building the density, building the strength, and practicing the reps of being really kind and compassionate to myself. And I'll do it even when it feels fake, even if there's a part of me that doesn't believe it. I'll practice saying it anyway, because the things we say and think about ourselves matter. I'm not great about it all the time, but it's something that I go back to often, it's probably the one practice I do more than anything else, is try to say something kind like, you are so cute. Gosh, do you know how cute you are? I love you. I love you so much. I'll call myself sweetie, sweetie pie. When I do that, I'm talking to 4-year-old me, 5-year-old me. Shame is always rooted in our history. It's always rooted in the littlest version of ourselves. And that's the version of me that needs to feel that love the most. Yeah, you made a mistake. Of course you did, baby, but it's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. You're going to learn. It's the same way that, like, when my children were learning to walk, if they stumbled, I would never be like, dummy. We never stop learning. The process of learning is the same. It's just we think it should be happening faster, better, and look sexier.
I heard the other day you should say your own name a lot more, because there's also something, it's like related to that thought of like the mirror work is also just saying your own name with love and compassion. And I also have just been trying to talk to myself like I talk to my dog. I had a partner who's been telling me, like, you serenade him all day long. He's like, where did you learn to serenade? I'm like, oh, my mama serenaded us all the time. That's like little me remembering this tool. That is this way that my mom probably pivoted herself from anger or frustration into like, I'm just going to sing this show tune, even though I'm tired and I'm pissed off. And so it was like, she just used song and like serenade to get us through the day. And I was like, you know what? I think I need to start talking to myself the way I talk to Billy, because he's the thing I love the most in the world. And if I can love him like that, I wonder what my life would feel like if I also loved me like that.
That is it. That is it. Elizabeth Gilbert has a Substack community called Letters from Love. And I've seen her talk about this practice in a live seminar with Martha Beck. I have adopted some of my own versions of this practice when I journal, but it's just, I find that when I'm learning something new, I'm really hungry for, give me examples, show me other ways that it's done. And I truly believe like you will find your own way, your own style. And hers is so unique to her, but it's also so profound in its simplicity and its beauty. And so that's just another way to access so much of the things that we're talking about too.
The last thing I'll say is regarding these topics that we've covered, which is like self-compassion, conscious relationships, they're all connected to this idea of the relationship with the self. I really think that's a theme of what your philosophy is helping people build those relationships with themselves, compassionate relationships with themselves. And like you said at the beginning, the levity of the big emotions. What else do we need to know that you want people to hear?
You're doing better than you think. You're doing better than you think. And I really, really, really mean that. I think that anybody who's in a place of self-discovery, self-examination, anybody who's in their own version of this work, what I know about that type of person is that they care and they're really hard on themselves. And you're doing better than you think. Even if you think there's a way you could be doing more, even if there's more to do, even if there's more on the to-do list, you're doing so much better than you think. So give yourself lots of credit.
Just cut that into one of those like repeating things that you play, when you go to sleep or something. You're doing better than you think.
You're doing so much better than you think. That's usually one of the mirror things that I'll insert when I catch my reflection. Be like, look at you. You're getting so much done. You're getting so much more done than you even think. I try to do it playfully too.
Final question we ask everyone. If you could wave a magic wand related to the work you're doing and the effectiveness that you're seeing in certain things, how would you apply that in a magical way that everybody had it? Like, what do you wish people could all have?
If everybody looked at the language of their emotion and treated it like a language that they were uniquely qualified to learn and interpret, it would completely shift their sense of confidence and worth and value. I think people would be living more kindly and authentically. All of these emotions, they're forms of expression that are uniquely tied to you. It's connected to your heart, your spirit, where you are now and where you want to be. It has all of your history behind you, like your emotional reaction to things. That is information. And that information is always reflecting something back to you. And how that's interpreted and how that informs you could completely transform your life to be even better. If it's already amazing, it could be even better. I mean, Oprah has an avocado orchard. There's always another layer. Sure, I'll take an avocado orchard. I'm never done manifesting. It's fun to think about what lies ahead when it can unfold like an adventure. And I think that that's an energy you can choose to bring into life if you allow it.
In order to cultivate that energy, it's the relationship you have to your emotions, not the emotions themselves.
There's so many emotions that are uncomfortable, but that's the information we need. Like hunger is uncomfortable. An itch is uncomfortable. And I know those are physical feelings, but that's still information.
Very much information. We could do another hour on that. I have a few avocado trees that I inherited when I bought the Love Lizzie farm, and you can come anytime and help me figure out what to do.
If that's the service I can provide for you, Teresa, I will gladly show up with my bushels and just grab all your avocados. I mean, every lock has a key, man. So it's just... You've got an abundance. I've got a need. I've got a taste.
I'm so grateful for this conversation and just the way you approached sharing about yourself so that we could understand what you were saying even better. And that's just really valuable right now. So thank you, Danielle.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I always love talking to you. It's been too long, Teresa, but thank you for having me. And thank you to the Love Lizzie community. And I'll be by to grab my avocados. Just got to book a ticket.
This podcast is produced by Love Lizzie. Our editor is Kayla Hill, and the music is by my very own sister, Julia Sabatine. If you like what you heard here, we would love for you to hit the subscribe button. See you next time.